here.
G'day, I'm Brent Waller, welcome back to Waller Customs. Today we're going to look at the second in my series of life-size Ghostbuster props made from Lego, the PKE meter. The PKE meter, or psychokinetic energy meter, is the tool of choice of Dr. Egon Spengler. He uses it more often than not, except for in Ghostbusters 2, where he seems to prefer the gigameter and Ray's using the PKE meter instead. It's actually the first piece of equipment you'll see them use throughout all of the movies. You do see them using other pieces of equipment first, but this is probably the more recognisable piece of equipment you'll see them, where Egon's using it in the library scenes early on in the first movie. And funnily enough, the actual prop used in the movie wasn't designed specifically for Ghostbusters. It was actually a hired prop from a prop house called Modern Props, which actually closed down last year after 42 years in service. But they actually hired this prop out to other movies and TV shows. It actually makes an appearance in John Carpenter's They Live with Roddy Piper.
I hear them on the 19th floor above me.
They got you. We're on the 21st. We'll be waiting for them.
It appears in Suburban Commando with Hulk Hogan and Christopher Lloyd, another wrestler. Not Christopher Lloyd, Hulk Hogan.
Wait a minute. We can find them with this. It zeroes in on the gun's electronic signal.
A homing device, great! Why didn't we just use this in the first place?
Shut up. Let's go.
It also appeared in a bunch of TV shows and TV movies. Apparently it's in
Knight Rider, a shadowy flight into the dangerous world of a man who does not exist.
But no one I can find can seem to track down where exactly it's used in.
Knight Rider.
It's also used in a TV show called Otherworld, which I've never heard of. In that, it's used as like some sort of science piece of equipment. They're scanning like a robot hand or something with it. It's used in Fall Guy. Not Fall Guys, Fall Guy.
Lord and Lady Pelham lost their lives here.
Let's get out of here.
Wait.
And it's also used in a TV movie called Condor, which seems to be some sort of like remote hacking device in that movie, or TV movie. And it's used in pretty much every iteration of Ghostbusters that I'm aware of. There's a different version of it that appears in the real Ghostbusters cartoon.
We have 3 Class 5 full torso apparitions.
Amazing! But what bizarre warp dimension do you think they came from?
Possibly New Jersey.
A modified version of that again appears in Extreme Ghostbusters.
PKE readings are through the roof.
A very different version pops up in the 2016 Ghostbusters reboot. In the 2009 Ghostbusters video game, the PKE meter is used as actually an integral gameplay tool where you're using it to track and scan for ghosts. And you're scanning items in the world, and once you've scanned them, they actually appear in like a digital version of the Tobin Spirit Guide. The Tobin Spirit Guide is like an in-universe book that the Ghostbusters use as a guide for cataloguing of spirits and paranormal activity throughout the Ghostbusters universe. And I'll mention this later in one of my other videos because there's something I'm referencing with that. But that's what they used in the Ghostbuster video game when they were scanning things with the PKE meter. You would scan it, items in-game, and that would turn up an article within the Tobin Spirit Guide in the video game, as if you're scanning and adding things to the Tobin Spirit Guide. You can actually buy that book too. I've got a copy of it myself, and it's got little references. It's like an in-universe book almost, and it's got like a foreword by Egon and I think Ray, where they talk about how they discovered the book in the past and how they use it for their research and development of the Ghostbusters technology. It obviously appears in the comics, being one of the integral tools of the Ghostbusters. And yes, that is Starscream in the background of that picture. That's from a crossover series IDW did with the Transformers, where a Cybertronian robot comes to Earth and scans the Ectomobile and then becomes Ectotron, a transforming version of the Ectomobile with his own robot form and a robot proton pack on his back. You can actually buy that as a toy. So the actual PKE meter, which this is just a replica of, the one that was used in the movie was based on an Iona shoe polisher, which is this sort of shape here and the handle was used to polish shoes and came out, I think, the early 70s. And they redesigned it and repainted it and put all these arms on and different pieces and turned it into the PKE meter at Modern Props. So as I said, this is the second in my series of life-size Ghostbuster props made from Lego. The first one you can check out on my channel is for the trap that you can see behind me, and now we're moving on to the PKE meter. And just like with the Ghostbuster trap, I used the prop as a reference when I was building this. And I'm not 100% happy with how this one turned out compared to the trap, just because it was a bit more difficult to achieve a lot of these curves. So where on the original you can see it's relatively straight, it's got curves to it, but mine's just a bit fatter and chunkier. And that was just an issue of time, really. I'd really like to go back and revisit it at some point, but I really want to get on to making some of the other props, which you'll see in some of the other videos. So I'm fairly happy with it. I've actually had to simplify the design on the back slightly, so on the real thing, or the replica, you can see there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, like 7 lines running down the back, and to keep that curve running across the top there, I've had to simplify that to be just 4, but it still sort of achieves a similar effect. Part of the issue with this is it actually took a fairly long time compared to the trap, relatively, given its size, just because those curves are all very tricky. Just to try and achieve curves in multiple directions, coming from multiple angles, and still try and make it match the original was actually really tricky. And there's a few things that weren't quite as accurate. So on the base of the replica, you can see it tapers up slightly at the top, and on this one it's just relatively straight. Well, it is straight. So that's one thing I couldn't really achieve with Lego without having stepped or really unnatural shapes. Got the little buttons down the bottom there, which I've replicated as closely as possible using some grills facing sideways, and even that top bit there sticks up slightly, just like on the original. It probably sticks up a little bit more on the replica. This is probably out of all the props, this one has the most studs visible on it, so you can see the most apparently Lego versus the trap, which is very, what do they call it, studs not on top. So that means that I'm using tiles and building pieces in different directions to allow it to not look like Lego. And then obviously you got the screen reader, which I haven't lit up or done anything of the sort like in this one, but I've tried to replicate those as well as I could. The angles aren't quite as light, so that you can see there's a bit of a slope leaning in on the replica, and mine's a bit more straight. I did try a few different techniques to try and get that angle in there, but it just all came out a bit bulky, and that's the biggest problem I found with this. It's just come out a little bit bulkier than I would have liked, but I'm still pretty happy with it. The arms are just manually moved up and down. It would be nice to get some sort of like a switch or something I could slide up and down to move them up and down, but the way this thing is built, it's I've got basically the studs are not on top on this one. There are studs visible, but using the studs not on top techniques, you're kind of building, like these ones are all facing this way, the sides are all facing out left and right, and that one's facing out the back. So you've got bricks facing all different directions. And although this is really sturdy, building it wasn't, because it's sturdy because all of those forces are interacting and pushing the Lego back into itself to hold it into place. And if I was to just take that top off or tape any of those off, the whole thing would start to collapse because they're all integral to holding each other in the right positions.
Are you the gatekeeper?
You better bring him inside.
You are so kind to take care of that man. You know, you are a real humanitarian.
I don't think he's human.
I think that just about wraps it up. I hope you enjoyed the look at my life-size PKE meter made from Lego. I've got my trap video, if you haven't already watched that one, on my channel as well, and I've got more life-size Ghostbuster props coming very soon. Thanks for watching.
Egon, your mucus.